Hi, everyone. I'm Reverend Michelle Manuel, and this is David Horton. We are in week 4 of our Scripture Shared study on Genesis. I'm so glad you are joining us. Hopefully, you have been journeying together with your small group or with a partner. Scripture is indeed best studied together. Today, we're looking at some of Abraham's story, and Reverend David Horton has done the writing this week. So, David, as we look at these pieces of Abraham's story, what is our kind of big idea, the big theme that's going on in this week?
Surrender. Surrender. So I had forgotten, or they just didn't teach me in seminary, that God tests Abraham 10 times. In the last passage that we'll get to today, the almost sacrifice of Isaac is the 10th testing. And every time it's a test of Abraham's trust in God. It's God saying, do you trust me? Like, do you really trust me? And Abraham has to get to this point of just unconditional surrender of his life and his entire family to God. So surrender, surrender, surrender.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. That test of trust. I mean, those are some pretty steep tests.
Oh, yeah.
The last one I think is the hardest
Yes.
for us to stomach.
It's more than just a trust fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell me, we had some readings, the reading about Hagar. Tell me about Hagar and Ishmael.
Sure. So just as a review, Abraham and Sarah are struggling with fertility,
Right.
and their solution is to have a surrogate pregnancy.
Yes.
And so Abraham and Hagar.
You make it sound so nice and clean, like
I'm
it's not
trying.
shady.
I'm trying.
Right,
There's
right.
much more shade to it,
Right,
but the
right.
whole concept remains.
Yes.
This is a surrogate pregnancy.
Yes.
Uh, but the idea is that so Abraham and Hagar have a child named Ishmael. But in that culture, where the surrogacy comparison really falls short, is that in this culture, Sarah would be Ishmael's mother.
Right.
Ishmael, Hagar would have no claim
Yeah.
whatsoever
Right.
to being Ishmael's parent.
Right.
Sarah gets very jealous of pregnant Hagar. I'm sorry, of pregnant Hagar, and sends her away, or asks Abraham to send her away, which he does.
Yeah.
He does, like out into the wilderness, where she's going to die of thirst, which she doesn't, but that's what it looks like.
Right.
And in the lesson this week, as I was writing it, I thought, this is Mary. Like,
Tell me about that comparison.
yeah, this is Mary, the mother of Jesus. This is Mary of Nazareth. So you
Okay.
have a pregnant young woman
Mm-hmm.
who finds herself in danger,
Right, right.
and she runs away.
Mm-hmm.
She runs away from home. So that the picture that we get in the Gospel of Luke, when Mary finds out she's pregnant, the angel Gabriel makes it sound like such good news, but for her, it's terrible news.
It is bad news. Her life is in danger.
That's right.
And she visits her cousin,
Yes.
Elizabeth.
And so she runs, and Hagar does the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in both stories, both Mary and Hagar, they're saved. They are met in the wilderness of their lives by this unexpected good news. Right. Elizabeth for Mary, and God appears to Hagar in the wilderness. Right. It's actually with Hagar, it's the first time that someone in the Bible gives God a name. Hagar names God El Roi. That's right. Or the God who sees. God sees me. That's right. I mean, Hagar is the ultimate invisible person in the story. She has no story, no backstory. We don't know anything about her. She's unseen. I don't know about you, but as a pastor, I've seen that really all people want is to be seen.
Yeah.
And to be taken seriously.
To be known, to be understood, to be acknowledged and recognized. That's right.
And God sees her and looks out for her.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Hagar has Ishmael.
Yes.
And then Sarah has Isaac.
There's
what's going on?
There's a period of about 15 years. So Ishmael's a teenager, and Ishmael, surprise, gets a baby half-brother in Isaac.
Those baby brothers.
They happen.
They cause problems.
And then Sarah, again, gets jealous and asks Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away.
Yeah.
Um, and so what happens? It happens. And in the lesson this week, I just saw that Abraham has to surrender, has
Yeah.
to surrender Ishmael
Right.
up, totally entrust Ishmael and Hagar
Yeah.
to God's care.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier about how, we drop off our kids at the same school
Yeah.
every day,
Yep.
or almost every day.
Yep.
And
it's an act.
it's an act of surrender.
Yeah.
We have to trust that somebody is going to take care of our
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah. It's an act of surrender. And that reminds me of, when we baptize our children, our babies in the church, it is an act of surrendering our child
Mm-hmm.
back to God, to the church. As the congregation, we respond that we would support the family, that we would support the little one. It's an act of surrender. Over and over, surrender is a mark of the Christian life.
Mm.
Yeah.
So Ishmael grows up and he becomes the ancestor of all the Arabic tribes. So our Muslim brothers and sisters to this day trace their lineage to Ishmael, and
Mhm.
our Jewish brothers and
We
sisters
are.
trace theirs to Isaac.
Right.
Mhm.
So the Ishmael Isaac story is interesting because in my other week's writings, there's always this older brother, younger brother thing. And so I just want to put a bookmark for you all that here again, we see there is an older brother who, for all intents and purposes, the way things should go is that the older brother is the inheritance, is the one who gets the blessing, is the one who carries it all on. And yet here again, it's the younger who does it. So I just want to put that bookmark there for you all. Yeah. Okay, so why in all of this, there's a lot of testing of Abraham
Mhm.
and of Abraham's hospitality.
Mhm.
So tell me about that, and why is hospitality highlighted?
Yeah. So going back before that second sending away of Ishmael,
Mm-hmm.
Abraham and Sarah are visited out in the desert by these three visitors. They just appear out of nowhere.
Right.
And Abraham and Sarah don't know it, but they're being tested there.
Mm-hmm.
Will they show hospitality to strangers? Right? And they do, and they announce to Sarah that she will, within a year's time, she'll be pregnant and give birth to a son named Isaac. Really, the test there is hospitality, because we, like we saw last week, God made this promise to Abraham to give Abraham all these descendants for a reason, to be a blessing to the entire world, right? And that's how God is going to deal with sin, to bless it all away. We're not going to flood the earth again. We're going to bless it away through these people. We're going to be a light to the nations. Well, God, you get this sense that God needs to make sure that Abraham is really serious about this, because God is taking the future,
Right.
and the salvation of humanity on Abraham and his descendants. And so, like the bare threshold that Abraham has to cross is welcoming people into his life. So these three strangers come up. They're thirsty. They're hungry. Will you give the thirsty something to drink? Will you give the hungry something to eat? Will you welcome the stranger? Sounds a lot like Jesus.
Sounds a lot like some things in the New Testament.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So Abraham passes that test in that story. In the church, theologians forever have seen those three angels as the Trinity showing up. Like maybe Jesus was there in the tent with them.
Right. Yeah.
And they passed the test.
And so as we think about the big idea for this week being surrender, how do you say hospitality interacts with surrender?
I'll tell you the times when my hospitality is tested is when I'm interrupted. I don't
That's
know
right.
how you deal with interruptions. Ask my wife. I'm growing.
It's tough.
It's tough.
It's a growing edge to be
It's-
interrupted and to remain hospitable.
But you surrender. You have to go,
Yes.
okay, all right. What I want is not the most important.
Yes.
Taking care of that person is most important.
Yes.
That person has needs, and I'm supposed to meet them.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm supposed to surrender that.
Yeah. I read a leadership book once, and the thing that's always stuck with me is that people matter. You can have your calendar, you can have your schedule, you can hold tightly to it. But if someone walks in your office door and has need, that's the most important thing right in front of you.
Yeah.
Hospitality is an act inherently of surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you've been given a new assignment in that moment.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you wrote a little bit about Lot and Lot's
Yeah.
wife. How is surrender showing up in that story?
So you have those three angels who visit Abraham and
Right.
Sarah in the wilderness. Two of those angels will go on to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
You see why they appeared on the scene in the first place, to rain down fire
Yep.
on these two.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be Sin City, right? Just
Right.
the most
The Las Vegas of the ancient world.
correct.
God bless Las Vegas.
And fire and brimstone just descends from heaven.
Yes, right.
And the one faithful person that the angels can find in Sodom and Gomorrah is Lot. Just that's the one person. And so they help Lot escape. But Lot's wife, the angels tell Lot, don't look back. Don't look back on all this devastation.
Yeah.
And Lot doesn't. Lot keeps his eyes ahead.
Yeah.
Lot's wife looks back. I just think that image of someone whose like feet are pointed forward and their eyes are pointed backward is so powerful, because that's when we get stuck in life.
Yeah.
I mean, the image is pretty powerful. She is literally stuck. She is
Yeah.
frozen as a pillar of salt for all
Yeah.
eternity. She's
Yeah.
stuck. And I know, I mean, I felt this way a lot in the pandemic. I felt stuck. I'm trying to move forward. My feet are pointed one way. My eyes are looking the other.
Yeah. 2019 was great.
Yeah.
There were a lot of good things happening then, right?
That's right. Or here's what I could have done.
Yeah.
Here's how I could have served better.
Right.
I wish I had that decision back. This is what I would have done if I had that back.
If we knew now what we knew, if we knew then what we knew
That's
now,
right.
you know,
That's
kind
right.
of life. Yeah. Turns you into a stuck pillar of salt.
It does. And just eventually you gotta get unstuck.
You got to get unstuck, and there's a
ahead.
surrender and there's a trust needed, right? That when you're getting instructions, like from three celestial beings,
Yeah.
maybe follow them. There's a trust and a surrender there, right? Yeah. Well, trust leads us to the last story.
Yeah. So our weekly lessons ended with the binding of Isaac, or the Akedah, Hebrew for binding. It's a hard. It's the last of
hard.
those 10 tests.
Yeah.
How we both have young children. It's just the idea of someone asking us to sacrifice them, quite literally,
Right.
is evil. Just evil to me.
Right. Right. It for our modern sensibilities, this is a difficult one to look at and not kind of think poorly of God and what's going on here. So what is this story actually about, though, David? Because it is a beautiful story.
For me, it all hinges on verse 5.
Okay.
So Genesis 22, verse 5. Abraham and Isaac are at the foot of this mountain, and Abraham has these servant boys who come with him on this journey, and nobody knows except Abraham what's supposed to happen here. And the servant boys are going, "Where's the animal for the slaughter?"
Right.
And Abraham goes to the servant boys and says, "We, as in me and Isaac, we will go up that mountain, and we will come back." And you have to ask yourself, well, is he lying to these servant boys? Or does he actually believe that we, Abraham and Isaac, we're going to go up?
And we will come down.
And we will come down.
We will come down.
And I just firmly believe he's not lying.
Right.
He absolutely believes God is going to figure all this out.
Yeah.
Out of this impossible situation.
Yeah.
We're going to come back.
Yeah. I don't know the way forward. I don't necessarily know how it's all going to shake out. But there's going to be something provided. There will be a sacrifice provided.
That's right. Now, let me be clear. If anybody calls my office at the church and says, "Hey, God's telling me to sacrifice my child," I mean, we're calling 911.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
But just that idea that I absolutely believe God is going to make a way out of no way. I think that's what this really hard story is about.
And again, this is the same thing. This is pointing us to the cross of Christ, that God will provide a lamb for the sacrifice.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's God's self.
God makes the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. We hope that you and your group engage in some wonderful discussion. We, as your pastors, would love to hear from you, and we'll see you next week.